Hello, everyone. I want to make this video for you. I'm at a conference in Orlando, Florida. I'm supposed to be traveling home today, and my flight's going to be arriving back home later than expected. Actually, going to be landing a little bit later than when class was actually supposed to start. So I had to make some adjustments, and I want to create this video for you, go over week 7. So we're getting close to the end of the semester. And this is the last full week. Also want to remind you that next week will be a short week with the final assignment, the mock IEP video, being due on Wednesday, July 24th at 4 o'clock. I said earlier in the semester, also brought it up last week, just as a courtesy reminder, and just want to make you aware of that. So we are finishing up our CBM assessment report this week. We're in week 7 on the month, and I want to do a quick screen share and go over a slide deck. Some pretty important information I want to keep, and then I will jump right into reviewing the expectations for the CBM assessment report, and also briefly talk about the outline or the guidelines for the mock IEP video. So I'm going to share my screen here quickly and pop up the slide deck. I want to go over briefly, share some key points with you. And so let's get for week 7, and it looks like it's popping up. Great. The slide deck for week 7 is the chapter 13 interpretation of assessment and results. And so slide deck for this week has information pertaining to interpreting results, creating a report, and then also how to write up the comprehensive report. So the introduction for this slide deck talks about what the reports all contain, characteristics of that, kind of what their purpose is, and also these are used whenever we are determining eligibility for IDA or services. And so the criteria, as I mentioned in previous weeks, some states now are getting away from what we call a discrepancy model and going more towards MTSS or RTI. Actually, Oklahoma is going to be shifting that direction in the next few years. And so we have a little bit of time to make those adjustments and prepare for that. So not uncommon for states to do that. Next thing is it's talking about more of the holistic view. It's important to view the child or the adolescent in his or her environment holistically, and also consider some of the environmental factors, more social factors, and just looking at the overall whole picture of the child before determining placement for that. So suggested procedures, the process in which we determine qualifications for special education. So first of all, as it lists here on this slide, we're going to secure parental permission. We can't just bring a student in and test them without any type of parental consent. Also, we want to make sure we're doing screening, sensory impairments or any physical problems. We want to do a little bit of parent interview, get some information from the parent. A lot of times we can collect that from the adaptive behavior skills, so the parent version of that. Then we also conduct intellectual and academic assessments. We also look at doing a behavioral assessment if there are some potential behavioral disorders that may be occurring with that child. And then we come in and do what we call test interpretation. That is, once the student has been tested, we do a meeting, come in, and we go through and interpret the test results. And then we start discussing and looking at kind of the overall broad view. And then within that test interpretation, we're going to rule out any sensory acuity problems that or any medical issues. We're going to determine if there's any conflicts going on at home that may need the services of school counselor or school psychologist. And then also we're going to determine or consider the previous educational experiences of the child. Have they been chronically absent through the years? Just a variety of things that we're going to look at. Additional suggested procedures as we look at any learning or school problems that may be exhibited. We're also going to compare their ability on intellectual, academic, and adaptive behavior measures. And so we're going to look at their overall ability and determine if there's any discrepancies in their scores based on students in the norm group that are their age. We're also going to look at any motor behavior problems that may exist, whether there's any speech language impairments that are evident and apparent. And also, we're going to assess any language factors. Is there a language barrier that may impact overall achievement of that student? So again, a lot of the information on this suggested procedures are facts, points, talking points, information that we brought up in class through the semester in the various modules that we covered for each week. So when we look at interpreting test results, we look at administering formal, informal assessments, which we've talked about that. You've got to do some of that in this class. Then we look at results in determining the student's strengths and their overall needs. And then we use that in the educational planning. We are determining placement if they qualify for services. So we have an inter-individual interpretation. So it's basically when we compare that student score to their peer norm group. So that's inter-individual interpretation. Then we also have intra-individual interpretation. That's comparing the student with his or own performance. Okay, so we're looking at a couple different areas there as well. Next thing we also look at, we talked about this a little bit in detail last week, is looking at IQ scores and adaptive behaviors. And so those are generally administered by the school psychologist, clinical psychologist, or educational diagnostician, often referred to as a school psychometrist. So we pinpoint strengths and weaknesses, and then we interpret those based on cognitive measures. We're looking for patterns of functioning. We're looking for similarities and differences between specific areas, such as verbal and nonverbal performance. And then we also look at a cross-battery assessment. And basically what we're doing is we're interpreting the student's skills and abilities across several assessment instruments. Okay, so we're using multiple instruments when we're measuring that child's ability. Next, we're going to look at their overall educational achievement. Okay, so the educator may be responsible for administering norm reference achievement tests. And we want to make sure that we ensure accuracy of administration. And so I mentioned this in previous Zoom meetings. We have to follow strict protocols when we administer the assessments. We can't just come in there and make adjustments as we go and modify that. We do formal testing. We have to follow the protocols to make sure we ensure accuracy and reliability. Then we have inter-individual interpretation, where we're comparing, again, bringing up these two terms I just mentioned. Inter-individual, we're comparing the student's scores with grade and age expectations within the norm group. And then we're looking at intra-individual interpretation, which identifies specific strengths and weaknesses when we're comparing the student to their own academic achievement. Okay, and we can do this all through assessments, and also allowing some room for error analysis. Then we go in and we write up test results. You guys got to, in this previous couple weeks when you were working on your norm reference assessment, I mentioned that I had an example of a comprehensive report. If you elected to use the testing video, that comprehensive report example I have posted was there for you to provide the data that you needed to complete your report. So if you've not looked at that, I encourage you to go and view that document. It's available on the course shell. And so when we talk about writing up results, we're taking all the information we've collected and we're putting it into a comprehensive report. We're going to organize based on domains rather than the tests that are given. We're going to describe the areas of strength and also the deficits or weaknesses that are very clear and specific. And we're going to emphasize process variables and different qualitative features regarding the students' learning strategies. Also within that, we may describe or highlight developmental ceilings, basals in there. There are different functional levels, skill sequences, and then also instructional needs that we are going to recommend for as we're developing a potential plan for services. And we're going to detail some suggestions in there regarding possible behavioral and instructional strategies, depending on what the suspected disability might be. So here's the recommended format. Again, if you look at the example of the assessment that I provided, or the example, you will see it basically follows this format. Also, some of these items here, different points, are also found in the format that we have been using for your assessment reports. And so we're going to identify data of the student. We're going to give a basic name, their age, a little bit about them. We're going to talk about the background and referral information. We're going to talk about the student's background, the reason for the referral, any classroom observations, and any pertinent parent information. Next, we're going to jump down and we're going to feature all the test results. And so that comes in the form of a narrative explanation. And then we also have the statistical data presentation. And then the next section we move into is want to go in and start interpreting and giving explanations of the results themselves, comparing discrepancies, and also comparing the different subtests on there. The next section we get into is summary and conclusion. So we just provide an overall summary of the actual administration of the assessment, a summary of the student and the information that we've collected using a variety of sources, informal assessments, formal assessments, any CBMs, any data that was collected before the formalized testing session, and information that was documented during the formal testing session. Then we give recommendations for educational interventions, and then also any recommendations for further assessment. And then after that, we, if it's deemed necessary for services, the team decides, then they sit down and start writing educational objectives. And this is when the IEP is developed. And so within that, we'll state any behavioral short-term objectives. We want to include, objectives that are observable and measurable. Then we also want to establish some benchmarks, and then also some long-term goals on that. So that, in a nutshell, is a little bit about interpreting the test, the processes that's used, up to the point where we're actually developing that comprehensive report, often referring back to the example that I provided in the course shell. So I wanted to share that. I think it's a well laid out slide deck. It's a great resource for you to go back and look at once testing has been done, and how we kind of put everything together, and then the process for putting the comprehensive report together, and actually what all is pulled together as far as information put together in that report. I'm going to do a stop share on this particular screen, and then I'm going to pull up an additional screen. It is actually going to be the syllabus. I want to share that with you, go over a couple quick reminders as we are approaching the deadline for the CBM assessment report. And I want to briefly talk about the mock, a couple of suggestions and things that you might want to consider as you begin preparing to develop that mock IEP video. So looking at a quick overview of the CBM that's coming up due. Remember, our identifying information section for this particular report is combining the background information section with identifying information. So it's all going to be embedded and placed under that heading of identifying information. So make sure that if you are using the same student, you don't have to read it. Will keep telling you that each report, if indeed it is the same case study student. If it is a different case study student for this particular assessment, make sure that you update and include the background information that's relevant to that particular student. Okay, so nothing really in that area, other than it is combined and embedded into one section. One of the new sections that we have is the um, probe and intervention section. So we want to remember to include this in our report. It is the new section, one of the new sections that I mentioned. So we want to make sure that we name and describe the probe used. Remember, again, the probe is just a different term for the assessment instrument. We want to make sure that we discuss the rationale for using that particular probe. Why do we select it? We want to talk about the quantity and frequency of the probe use, name and describe the intervention used, discuss the rationale for the intervention, and then explain any modification you had to use for the selected intervention, if indeed you had modified after you implemented that intervention. You may not have, and that's fine. Just briefly explain that no modification was necessary or needed. Then we jump down to the test results and interpretation section. Again, we've been doing this, but there are a couple of new areas that we need to make sure that you realize that are in there. For courtesy reminder, again, you are going to continue to put raw data in tables, charts, and graphs. Raw data you are collecting just as you have done. But remember, for this report, we're going to add a new graph to display our data for the CBM. So with this graph, we want to make sure that we are including the baseline, the 3 lines that we talked about a couple weeks ago. So we have the baseline, the intervention line, where that intervention may have taken place, and we want to make sure that we're including the aim line. So make sure that you include this graph. If you'll see, it's valued at 50 points. And so the tables, charts, and graphs sections combined are 78 points. So a significant amount of points for this assignment. But please remember, you're adding this new graph that has the baseline, intervention, and aim line. We're trying to get 6 total, 6 data points after we have established that baseline. So remember, we usually give the probe a couple times, come up with the baseline, and then we want to have 6 data points following that baseline after it's been established. We're going to go in and give an explicit analysis or explanation of the chart or the table graph that we have put into our report, especially this new one that shows the baseline, intervention line, and aim line. Okay, we're going to support any conclusions using the data from CBM, and then also make sure you highlight that student strengths and weaknesses. Okay, so a couple new areas that fall into test results and interpretation. We're going to have our basic recommendation and conclusion section. We've been doing that in the previous assessment reports. This is nothing new. Okay, you're going to explain or highlight any instructional planning recommendations based off the data you have collected, or any modifications to content, any grade level changes in material that might take place or that you deem to be necessary. Then basically just give a brief summary of the overall performance. Another new area, this is the second new area for this particular report compared to previous reports, is the reflection section. Okay, so I really spent some time on this last week. Again, this week, it's a courtesy reminder. Don't forget this section. It is new compared to your previous reports. So in the reflection section, we're asking you to explain 3 things that was learned about the CBMs that you administered. Okay, really within this reflection section, as I mentioned last week, there's no right or wrong answer. It's asking for your personal thoughts based on your experiences of administering CBM. So give some feedback on your personal experience on 3 things that you learned from administering the CBM. Then you're going to follow up with a discussion or explanation on if you would use CBM again and why. Would you or would you not? Support your stance with at least 2 pieces of data of why you would or would not. Again, there's no right or wrong on this. This is basically asking for your personal thoughts and feelings based on your experiences from conducting the CBM assessments. To wrap up this section and conclude it, you're going to outline at least 2 strengths, what you personally feel like are 2 strengths and 2 weaknesses after using CBM, the CBM assessments. Okay. So again, no right or wrong answer for this section. It's asking you to give us some feedback on your experiences and personal feelings from using CBM. Okay, organization mechanics. Remember, you're going to include a lesson plan using the template in the course shell, as we've done with the previous two assessment reports. You're going to take the data you collected from the CBM assessments, not the data from your previous assessment, but from the CBM to develop this lesson plan for your case study student. Also remember to include your parent permission form, even if it's the same case study student. You can use that same form that's signed, where you're listing the reports. Just make sure you list your CBM probe that you use. Just give a little brief description on that line, even if it's the same case study student. Include your parent permission form. Okay, so that is a quick overview that I wanted to share with you, just more of a reminder based on the information that we covered in last week's class as you're starting on the CBM assessment report. Remember, that assignment is due this Sunday, July 21st, on or before midnight. Okay, so remember that's coming up this week. Also, want to remind you as I start talking about the mock IEP, remember, after you submit that assignment this Sunday, on or before midnight, we have a very quick turnaround for week 8. Okay. Remember, I talked about this at the very beginning of the semester, week 8, which is finals week, for your final assignment. It will be the only week in which your assignment is not due on a Sunday at midnight. It will be due on Wednesday, on or before 4 o'clock. Okay, for the final assignment, which is the mock IEP. Purpose or the reason why is it takes quite a bit of time. You remember, talked about it takes a lot of time for us to go through and review the videos, and then we have to have grades submitted on or before noon on that Monday. So it gives us adequate time to review all the videos across all the sections. I'm going to drop down, talk a little bit about the outline for the mock IEP video, give a couple pointers, some suggestions to think about as you start creating that. So as I scroll down and get to that, I want to point out, as I said before, the mock IEP video is something that you can do in your home office, in your classroom at school, in your kitchen, at the kitchen table. We're going to assume that the IEP team is there with you. I know and you know that they're not, but we are creating a mock-up here. And so I highly recommend that perhaps you print off the criteria that I'm going to go over, maybe place it beside you or in front of you on the keyboard as you are creating your video, just as a reference point, so you know that you are covering all the points of information that we're looking for in the IP video. One thing that students have done is they will create their mock IEP video using Zoom and do a screen share, much like I'm doing now. And they have went through and created a slide deck using this same guideline that I'm going to go over with you or outline to help them stay on track and share the information they need to do. One thing that I want to point out and emphasize is that we want to make sure that you are presenting your visual representation of your data, just like you have in your reports, but you want to make sure it's visible in this mock IEP video. You can embed them in your slide deck if you're doing a screen share, just like the example that I gave you a few seconds ago. Using Zoom to where they create a slide deck, they're doing a screen share just like I am talking to you right now. Or if you're not comfortable with technology and not quite sure how to do that, you can be creating your video, explaining, and you can take actual hard copies of your tables, charts, and graphs that you've used. And as you are explaining to the team, you can literally hold it up in front of the camera and point to it in reference as you are explaining that. So either way will meet the requirements. You can do it on the actual screen. If you don't feel comfortable, you can literally hold up the table, chart, or graph that you use for that particular report as you are explaining your information to the mock-up team that is in your video. So we'll go down through these quickly. Remember, you've already done the assessment. You've already collected the data. This is your information. You're presenting it. Okay. It's not like you're having to go out and recreate it. You've already done it. Now present it as if you are giving the team information based on data that you've collected to determine if the student needs to be formally assessed for IP or special education services. So we're going to do, first of all, an introduction to the meeting. And so what we're looking for here is that you're going to introduce your team members as if they were in the room with you. For instance, you might want to introduce the school psychologist, the building level principal, the school counselor, the regular education teacher, whoever is going to be making up the team. You're going to introduce them and welcome them to the meeting. You're going to state the purpose of the meeting. This would be in the form of you wanted to bring the team together to share some information based on your case study student and data and information based on various assessments that you have administered to collect data to determine the student's overall strengths and weaknesses. Next, you're going to go right into and explain and state all the assessments that you've used, talk about the specific informals that you used, talk about the specific norm reference assessment that you selected, and then also you're going to talk about the CBM Pro. Okay, and you're going to state those assessments and you're going to explain why you used them. You're going to talk a little bit about students' present level of performance and how they have perhaps progressed over time. Progression could be coming from after you've collected the data, you've made some adjustments in your instruction, and then when you move forward and administer the next assessment, you saw some definite gains. And we're going to make sure that you explicitly explain the performance on each of the assessments. You want to make sure that you are providing data, explaining the data. This is where you are going into your tables, charts, and graphs on the next line item. Whether you share it on your screen or you're literally holding it up in front of the Zoom camera or whatever platform that you're using. You're giving them that visual representation so they're not only hearing it verbally as you explain the data, but they're also seeing the tables, charts, and graphs. Okay, so make sure you show that either way on your screen or literally holding it up on the camera. As you progress through the video, make sure that you highlight 3 student strengths, what you found to be 3 student strengths, and also talk to the team about what you identified as 3 weaknesses based on the assessments and the data you collected of the student. Okay. Next, we're going to go down and we're going to outline 2 short-term SMART goals. When I talk about short-term, I always say, hey, think about short-term being a 9 weeks or the upcoming quarter or 9 weeks is going to take place after this presentation, after this meeting. Okay, so that's what we're talking about as short-term, 1 quarter or 9 weeks. When we're talking about a long-term, we're talking about over through the course of the remainder of the school year or for the length of the school year. So we could say this is August, and the 2 long-term goals would be what I would hope for my case study student to achieve on or before the end of the school year. Okay, so make sure you share 2 specific short-term and long-term goals. Then as we begin to wrap up the mock IEP meeting, you want to make sure that you discuss how parents, family, or the guardians can help support your goals. This could be something as simple as if you're doing reading, get them to sit down 3 to 4 nights a week for 15 to 20 minutes and read with their child. Okay, it could be something as simple as that, just something that they can do at home to help support what you're proposing to do at school to help accomplish the overall goals that you have set forward. And then conclude the meeting by giving them, any team member, opportunity to ask questions based off the information you have submitted. You just give them that opportunity to ask any type of question. No questions. Thank the team for coming to the meeting to review the information that was presented, and basically you look forward to working with them as you move forward to try to help achieve the goals that's been established for your case study student. Okay, ultimately, you've already conducted the information or the assessments. You've already been graded on that. You've been scored on it. You've already done that work. Well, the main goal of this mock IEP video for your final assignment is looking for the flow of the meeting. Can you present the information in a confident manner? Are you organized? Do you feel confident doing this? Okay, I mentioned, I believe it was last week, we're trying to give you practice doing this and presenting the information to your IEP team and being organized and structured. And we're looking for the ebb and flow of the meeting. That's mainly what I'm looking at in this IEP, mock IEP. Do you present the information in a clear, easy to understand manner? Did you provide or encourage questions and or input? And are you presenting the information in a confident manner? Okay. That's what I'm looking at, really focusing on in this video. Again, you've already collected the data. You've got it. You're just presenting. You know it because you've done it. You've collected it through the first 6, 7 weeks of this course. Now you're presenting it to your team at school. Okay, so that's really the overall goal of this. We really like for the video, if at all possible, to be 12 to 15 minutes. Again, if you follow the guidelines that I just went over, it will enhance your ability to stay within that time frame. So please look at that. Try to condense your information, get it down where you can present that in a flowing, confident manner, and really work hard at trying to get that into a 12 to 15 minute. Things I do want to mention before I close on the video is oftentimes, depending on the browser that you're using and how you choose to upload that in the Black, we've often found that times if you use Internet Explorer or Firefox, it tends to prolong the upload process in the Blackboard. You think it'll be uploaded, and you look, and it just shows like the hourglass words. It's spinning and loading like it's taking forever. Less likely to have that happen if you are using Chrome as your browser. So that's something to think about. Another thing is uploading the video. Sometimes I've had them upload the actual file. Remember, sometimes the files are larger. Another thing oftentimes I do is go in and I will upload it and create a YouTube link, and then just copy and paste the YouTube link into Blackboard. If you choose to do that, you feel confident doing that, please make sure that you're giving me the rights to access that. Make sure that you are making the video public and that it's not private. That way, again, I can access that. Again, I apologize for having to do the video. Travel arrangements were changed up a little bit. Going to be arriving later than I anticipated, which would be actually during our scheduled Zoom time. If you have questions regarding how to upload or the easiest way to upload that video, please email me if needed. And I have a lot of questions. We'll schedule a quick Zoom for the class. I can walk you through that process. If you are not confident doing that and you need some assistance, certainly don't mind to do that at all. So again, if you have questions regarding any information that I presented or included in this video, please email me and be in later this evening. Check emails after I arrive home, sometime after 8:30 this evening, and then we'll be back on our regular schedule during the early morning and again in the afternoon. So again, apologize for the change right here on last time. Appreciate your flexibility, and again, please email me after you review the video and you have any additional questions. We'll go ahead and stop sharing. and get ready to close out the video file. So I hope you have a good evening. And again, please email me if you have any questions or need additional information. Thank you.